Hey everybody, what's up? Today, excuse me, my throat got congested all of a sudden. Today I'm going to be explaining multiple rational reasonings, multiple rational philosophies on why it is absolutely reasonable and probably the right idea that God exists. Some of these arguments I've created myself that I've just thought they've probably been thought of beforehand, but I thought of these without any exterior influence. But yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. So, my my first argument is the energy cannot be created nor destroyed argument. Now, I'm not sure how far back your memory goes, but I'm going to say about 4th grade. I remember being taught by my teachers in science class, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Cannot be created nor destroyed. So, with that being said, we as human beings have a soul, right? I hope you can distinguish from me who's sitting here and the rabbit I saw jump away whenever I was coming to record this video. Hope you can see the difference, because obviously I am not a rabbit. Humans have a lot more innate value than a rabbit, because although rabbits are created by God, we are created in the image of God, if that makes sense. We are His very own. So, with that being said, we have a conscience. We have a conscience. My question would be, what happens to our energy, our soul, and our being when we die? Because again, as we said, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. And, well, counter argument to that might be, well, similar to all things, we simply just go into the ground, perish, and we become one with the earth, and that's how our energy gets spread out. But here's my objection. My objection is that a conscience, the soul, a being, is not physical. You cannot touch your conscience. You cannot, whenever they're doing a surgery on you, they do not have to disregard your conscience. They do not have to make sure avoiding to touch it, otherwise you'd die. They do not have to do that, because our conscience is not physical. Therefore, where does it go? Where does our conscience go after we die? And my answer to that would be two things: either heaven or hell, depending on the way you live your life on earth, if you respond to the gospel call that Jesus Christ gives us all. So, that is my first rational reasoning on why I believe God exists. Number two, the second reason on why I believe it is perfectly perfect, perfectly reasonable, perfectly rational for us, me, you, the guy down the street, to believe that God exists, is the idea of evil. And a lot of people will hear me say that and think that is utterly contradictory, because, if God's real, why evil? And here's the thing, a lot of people make fun of that statement when it is a completely valid question. If God is real, why does evil things happen? Why do I see evil things go around me? Why is it that some kid got punched in the face for an absolutely stupid reason that he did not need to be punched in the face for? Let me make this clear. God did not and will never cause me, you, I, whatever, to do evil. He will never force us to make evil. We, as human beings, have innate free will. We have free will. That is what was seen in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Eve, in her free will, listened to the snake and said, "Okay, Adam, here, try this." Adam, as well as free will, initially was skeptical about it. And, well, eventually he decided to give in because, in my opinion, that seed had already been planted in his heart that, it'll be fine. So, we can easily recognize that evil exists. We see it in our day-to-day lives. Evil is everywhere. Evil is prominent. There is not a day where you do not go without seeing some form of evil, especially with modern-day internet and modern-day technologies. So how does this prove God? If there's an evil, there has to be a good. There is no good without the bad, because if it's just bad, then in that case everything would be bad, because there would be no standard to go off of. There would be no way you could point at like something going on. Like, let's say I give my lunch tray at school to a particularly lonely kid. You're not going to sit there and say, yeah, that action, that work I just did was equal as punching somebody in the face. You're going to say, no, one action was evil, one action was good. So that's my whole point, that is my whole reasoning, the whole good-evil thing. Last point, last reasoning on why I believe it is totally intellectually reasonable to believe God exists would be the last and final reason why I believe it is perfectly intellectually honest, intellectually preferable to believe that God exists, that He exists, and that we are the result of His creation is simply science. Now, a lot of atheists are going to hear, atheist agnostics, are going to hear me say that and are going to scoff, because here's a lot of Christianity, particularly in the South, the Appalachian Mountain region, areas like that in the U.S., there was a lot of Christians who cling to anti-intellectualism. What does that mean? Essentially, they think, okay, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm just not going to think about it, and I'm going to tell everybody else that's a sin to think about that. That is not true, and that is extremely harmful to the Christian faith. The earliest apologetic Christian you can find in church history is Justin Martyr, a Christian who lived during the 2nd century. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think he was a disciple of Polycarp, who was a disciple of the Apostle Luke. So this is the very beginning of Christianity. This wasn't 500 years later somewhere in Constantinople. This was he was born less than 100 years after the birth of Christ. So, science. Let's take a look at some of the scientific background that could be extremely plausible to think that God exists, that there is a God, and that He lives. So, first point. So, you've likely heard this before, but a lot of people do not take how incredibly grave it is, how incredibly astounding it is, this fact. But the Earth itself, if the Earth were 1 centimeter further or 1 centimeter away from the sun, correct my measurements if you will, if those are wrong, we would not exist. The Earth would not produce vegetation. That tree behind me, well, I should probably say those trees behind me would not exist. Right here where I would be standing would likely be one of two things, either just barren land or a frozen over chunk of something. I don't know. And a common rebuttal to that would be, well, it's plausible that, yeah, that did appear just out of sheer chance. I forget the exact statistic on how probable that is to be. And this doesn't just include the the scientific reasoning that I just concluded. No, it includes every single possible points. The idea of, you know, a cell splitting in half and multiplying in the first place without any exterior person pushing it to do so. It includes that whole spiel. So, my first point on the scientific reasoning, if the Earth were barely closer to the sun or barely further away to the sun, me, you, I, the dude across the road would not exist. We would be just simply nothing. And the sheer chance that happens without an exterior creator is extremely slim. Number 2 on the scientific reasoning. Let's take a look at that tree. That tree is a specific species designed for this area. It has been here, that species has been here for thousands of years. Its leaves each have individual cells running around producing oxygen. Its cells are doing multiple extraordinary things at once that we don't even take and realize. Everything that we have, that includes like air, water, fire even, shelter, it all exists. And it's like, they all complement each other. They all complement each other for the human existence. There's not, obviously that tree exists so that birds can fly around. But in a similar fashion, birds were created for man. God told Adam in the garden, you have dominion over each and every one of these animals. So yes, that tree was obviously created for the bird, but also in a larger, grander fashion, that tree complements human existence. The creek going down here, there was probably a Native American Indian tribe who drank from that creek a few thousand years ago. That too complements mankind. So, let me just go over what that's all I have covered. Reason number 1 that God exists is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and we have a conscience. Therefore, where does that conscience go whenever we die? Number 2. I forgot what number 2 is. Give me a second. Crap. You know what? Go back in the video and watch number 2. I forgot what number 2 is. Number 3, scientific reasoning. Scientific reasoning, that exists, that exists, that exists, and that all helps to push the human species up because God created us in His image. Now, obviously, there are some arguments that are stupid rabbit. There are arguments that I've discussed that are stronger than others and some weaker than others, some of which I wouldn't exactly call a good argument. The first argument is probably the best argument I've listed in this video, and obviously that's why I started with it. So, if you are an atheist, an agnostic, or anything in between, you might be questioning to yourself, how on earth do I know it's a Christian God? How on earth do I know it's Him if there's a big, massive man responsible for that? Well, let's take a look at the historic evidence. There has been you can fact check me all you want on this, but there's not going to be a single reliable, keyword reliable source that you find that says otherwise. There's not been one archaeological discovery in the history of Christianity that disproves any fact or statement in the Bible. The Septuagint, on the other hand, that's arguable, but I'm a Protestant, so I do not use the Septuagint. That's the first reason on why Christianity would be the true religion. Second, although this is a weaker argument, this is certainly one to be brought up, the numerous miracles that are unable to be explained by science that have happened to people and in the Bible. I've had a miracle happen to me. I remember I was working out in my 9th grade weight room class. I was doing whatever this exercise is on that machine. Those who go to any sort of gym know what I'm talking about. I felt something tear harshly in my back. And I immediately knew, yeah, my back's pretty done. So I eventually start feeling up on it. About 2-3 minutes later, I'm like, dude, that is pretty badly swollen. And I have the urge to pray that God would heal it. Option A, he didn't do it because it was in his will. Or option B, he did it because he was in his will. He healed my back on that, I'm going to guess, March day. I remember I felt almost a cold sensation go over my back. Pain was no more. I was not able to do this without having a sharp and intense pain on my back. Now, obviously, I do not expect you to convert Christianity based upon my own personal experience. But what I do expect you to do is to research and question, okay, if he is telling the truth, how did that happen? Because obviously, you know, I think it's called the Mandela effect, obviously does not apply to actual and real wounds. Those are just two reasons on why Christianity would be the one religion out of all the others. You take a look at Islam, for example, they believe Jesus was not crucified, when that is extremely historically inaccurate. Take a look at Judaism, it has changed as a religion as a whole, and you might be saying, well, doesn't Judaism precede Christianity? The purpose of Judaism was to fulfill it was prepared to make the red carpet for Christ. That was the purpose of it. So, ever since, you know, Christ came, Judaism has changed entirely. They no longer have a temple. They no longer do sacrifices. And yeah, Judaism, go back 3,000 years ago, you'd be looking at an entirely different religion. So, I highly recommend that you take in critical thought what you have heard me speak in this video. I urge you to. And if you want to hear more from me, I'm relatively new to this YouTube stuff. I ask that you subscribe if you want to. I don't really care how many subscribers I get. All I care is about what he thinks about me, and that's that final. Thank you all for watching this video. I plan to make a lot more in the future. I will see you all later, and goodbye.